Don't drink it, and leave now. The millionaire froze, his eyes locking with hers. One wrong move, and he'd be dead, but what she didn't know was that saving him would pull her into a nightmare far beyond her worst fears, and into a secret that could destroy everything. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe, it's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. Bethel's hand shook as she slid the folded white note under the rim of the champagne glass. Her fingers brushed the man's, cold, steady, powerful. He didn't look at her, not yet. The chandelier light glimmered off the bubbles rising in the flute. Everything about the moment felt too delicate, too exposed. Her heart thudded. One sip and he's gone. The note, small and trembling in her hand seconds before, was now sitting against the thin crystal stem like a final prayer. He still hadn't noticed. Or maybe he had. For a second, Bethel dared to look up at him. A sharply dressed man in a charcoal suit, dark hair, chiseled jaw, and eyes that seemed carved out of stone. He had the posture of someone used to commanding rooms, not someone who would ever suspect he was in danger, not someone who expected a waitress to save his life. Bethel swallowed hard. She leaned forward again, pretending to adjust the table setting, and whispered without moving her lips, "Don't drink it. And leave. Now." He finally turned to her. His hand froze midair, the champagne glass hovering halfway to his mouth. And then, he caught her wrist. Firm, controlled, not painful, but enough to anchor her in place. Bethel gasped softly, her breath hitching as a tremor ran down her spine. She felt suddenly exposed, like he could see everything. Her fear, her desperation, her secret. The room around them didn't stop for a moment. Dinner chatter echoed. Silverware clinked. Waitstaff moved gracefully through the golden glow of the ballroom. No one saw the way he held her. No one saw that her life might have just changed. Slowly, he turned the note over in his hand, reading only the outside words she'd scribbled in a rush. "Don't drink it." He lifted his gaze, and for the first time, his voice filled the space between them. Deep, low, steady. Why not? Bethel's breath shuddered. This was it. The moment everything could unravel. "Please," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Just trust me." His brows lowered. Not angrily, curiously. Dangerously curiously. The champagne glass still hung in his other hand. Glittering. Deadly. Bethel didn't know if she could stop him. She didn't know if he would believe her, or call security, or worse, draw attention that would put her on the suspect list instead. But she had no choice. Not if she wanted to save him. Not if she wanted to protect Dorothy. Not if the truth about what was happening upstairs in the private medical wing of this hotel ever had a chance to come to light. She forced out the words, "Because someone wants you dead." The millionaire who was never supposed to be here. Only 2 hours earlier, Bethel had been rolling silverware and trying to convince herself that today, just today, she could hold it together. The grand ballroom of the Valemorn Regency Hotel glowed like a palace. Glittering mirrors. Velvet drapes. Gold trim. The kind of place where the wealthy didn't just eat, they displayed themselves. But Bethel wasn't wealthy. She wasn't even supposed to be working this shift. Her younger sister, Dorothy, a nurse at the hotel's private medical suites, had called her that morning with a trembling voice Bethel almost didn't recognize. "Bethel, something's wrong. I can't explain it over the phone. Just come to the hotel tonight. Please." Dorothy never begged. She never asked for help. So Bethel took the shift, put on the red uniform skirt, pulled her blonde hair into a knot, and tried to look like someone who belonged in a place she could never afford to breathe in. But when she saw the guest list, her stomach dropped. That man, Adrian Harley, the reclusive millionaire financier who rarely appeared in public, known for buying failing medical companies and turning them profitable, but whispered to be ruthless in his methods. A man surrounded by rumors, bribery, sabotage, hostile takeovers. He was the one Dorothy had mentioned months ago. The one she said was behind the unethical trials happening upstairs. And now he was here, drinking champagne, surrounded by strangers who thought the worst thing that could happen tonight was a spilled glass of wine. Bethel had no idea what was in that glass, just that she had seen Dorothy earlier near the back service hallway, eyes wide, face pale, whispering, "If you see him, don't let him drink anything." Bethel didn't ask questions. There wasn't time. Adrian Hale's fingers tightened around Bethel's wrist, not cruelly, but with the controlled strength of someone trained never to show weakness. Bethel expected suspicion, anger, dismissal, but instead, he studied her. "You're shaking," he said quietly. "You believe what you wrote." "I know what I wrote," she whispered. "And it's true." "Who told you something was wrong?" Bethel hesitated. Dorothy's name pulsed like a warning behind her ribs. "I can't say," she whispered. Adrian lifted the champagne flute, swirling the liquid gently. "Do you know what's in this?" "No," Bethel admitted. "But I know it's not safe." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "And why," he murmured, "would a stranger risk her job, and possibly her life, to warn me?" Bethel swallowed hard. Because Dorothy trusted her. Because she had seen something terrible upstairs, something she wasn't supposed to see. Because Adrian wasn't the only person in danger tonight. "I need you to trust me," she whispered. "And why," he replied, "would I trust you?" Bethel's pulse hammered. She didn't have the words. She didn't have proof. She only had her fear, her desperation, and the memory of Dorothy's trembling hands. So she did the only thing she could think of. She pulled her wrist free from his grip, finally, and reached for the champagne flute. Before he could react, she lifted it to her lips and stopped just before it touched them. "If you're right," she whispered, "then I live." Adrian's body went rigid. "And if I'm right," she said, her voice thin and breaking, "then I die." The room somehow felt colder, quieter. Adrian stared at her, really stared at her. And then, swiftly, he caught the bottom of the flute and pushed it away from her mouth. "Enough," he murmured. His voice, still controlled, now carried something else. Not anger, not fear. Something like unease. He took the glass from her, set it down, and covered it with his palm. "Come with me," he said. Bethel's breath hitched. "Where?" "Somewhere we can talk." Talk. That meant he believed her, at least enough not to dismiss her. But as she glanced around the ballroom, her stomach tightened. Because someone else had noticed. At the far side of the room, near the columns, a man in a staff uniform stood perfectly still. Not serving. Not moving. Watching. Eyes fixed on Bethel and Adrian. Her heart dropped. That wasn't a waiter. Dorothy had described men like him. Private security. The kind that didn't work for the hotel. Bethel's voice barely made it out. "We are being watched." Adrian followed her gaze. His expression didn't change, but the shift in his posture told her enough. He saw the man. He recognized what that meant. His jaw tightened. He stood slowly, smoothly, like a man who didn't want to give away that he now understood the stakes. "Walk beside me," he murmured. "Smile. Look calm." Bethel tried. The smile felt like a knife pressed against her cheek. She grabbed a serving tray to hide her trembling hands. The security man in the distance took a step. A slow, deliberate step. Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Who else besides me is in danger?" And despite her fear, despite the threat slowly approaching across the ballroom, despite everything, Bethel's eyes burned with tears. "My sister," she whispered. Adrian froze mid-step. The security man was now weaving through tables. Bethel felt her chest tighten as panic clawed at her ribs. "Dorothy," she whispered, She's a nurse. She saw something she shouldn't have. Please, we have to get to her before they do." Adrian didn't ask another question. He grabbed her hand. And the two of them moved. Bethel's pulse thundered in her ears as Adrian Hale's hand wrapped around hers. Warm, steady, impossibly calm for a man who had just been told someone wanted him dead. They walked, glided, through the ballroom like a pair who belonged together. Like a wealthy guest and his personal server. Like nothing at all was wrong. But everything was wrong. The man in the waiter's uniform was closing the distance between them. Each step was calculated, predatory. His eyes stayed fixed on Bethel as if she were the only person in the room. Her stomach nodded. Adrian leaned down just enough that only she could hear his voice. "Don't look back," he murmured. "He'll know we've seen him." Bethel nodded, forcing her feet not to stumble. "Where are we going?" "The service corridor behind those curtains," Adrian said. "I know this hotel." "You've been here before." "More times than I want to admit." His grip tightened slightly, guiding her toward the tall ivory drapes framing the edge of the ballroom. From a distance, they looked decorative. Up close, they concealed a narrow staff-only passage. Bethel's breath shook. Just 20 more steps. 19. 18. She fought the urge to check behind them, but Adrian's warning echoed in her head. "Don't. Look. Back." They reached the curtain. Adrian pulled it aside with the fluid confidence of someone who had done this escape routine before and slipped behind it, taking her with him. The moment they stepped into the service corridor, the noise of the ballroom vanished like a door slamming shut. The air grew cold, dim, quiet enough to hear their breathing. Bethel let out a trembling breath. Is he following? Adrian tilted his head, listening. Footsteps. Firm. Steady. Approaching. "Yes," he whispered. "He is." They moved quickly down the narrow hallway, past crates of linen, darkened storage rooms, stainless steel kitchen doors that smelled faintly of garlic and wine. Adrian kept her close, his hand guiding her through shadows. "Tell me about your sister," he said softly, his voice urgent but steady. Bethel's eyes stung. "Dorothy's a nurse in the private medical suites upstairs. She told me, weeks ago, that something dangerous was happening. Something involving patients who weren't supposed to be there." Adrian's gaze sharpened. "The suites on the 11th floor?" "Yes." His jaw tensed. "Those rooms aren't officially registered. They're leased by an unnamed subsidiary. I tried to investigate, but the records were wiped." Bethel's breath hitched. Dorothy said the same thing. She found documents that didn't match the patient logs. Footsteps sounded behind them again. Closer. Adrian pulled Bethel into a side alcove, just in time. The man in the waiter's uniform strode past the junction. Slow. Alert. Scanning each branch of the corridor. Bethel pressed back against the wall, barely daring to breathe. Adrian's body shielded hers, one hand braced near her shoulder, the other still around her wrist. His breath was warm against her temple. His heartbeat steady. Too steady. Did nothing shake this man? After several tense seconds, the fake waiter walked on. Adrian waited another beat before pulling her forward. "We have less time than I thought. Whoever he works for wants us separated." "Us." Bethel whispered. "After you slipped me that note," Adrian said, "you became a loose end." Her stomach sank. "I wasn't supposed to be part of this." Neither was I. The service elevator. They reached the end of the corridor, where a heavy metal door led to the freight elevator. Adrian hit the call button. The old elevator rattled softly from somewhere far below. Bethel chewed her lip. "What if he finds us?" "He won't," Adrian said. "How do you know?" "Because he thinks we are heading for the main exit." He paused. "And because I know these corridors better than he does." Bethel looked up at him. "You talk like you used to come through here a lot." A muscle in his jaw ticked. "I did. For business. For survival," he said quietly. Before she could ask what that meant, the elevator doors dragged open with an old metallic groan. They stepped inside. Adrian pressed 11. But then he did something unexpected. He pulled a small silver key from the inside of his suit jacket and inserted it into the keyhole next to the panel, turning it halfway. The button for the 11th floor lit up red. "W8," Bethel whispered. "You have a key for the restricted floors." Adrian didn't meet her eyes. "I used to own this hotel." Bethel's breath caught. "Used to?" "I sold it when the medical wing began making changes I didn't approve of." He exhaled sharply, as if the air itself burned. "Changes made behind my back." Bethel felt a chill run through her. Dorothy said the medical wing has become dangerous. "It has." "And this is connected to you," she whispered. "Yes." The elevator hummed upward. The lights flickered once. Twice. Bethel tensed. What was that? "Power interference," Adrian said. "Someone's trying to lock down the upper levels." "You mean, someone knows we are coming?" No, Adrian's eyes darkened. "They know I'm coming." The elevator doors opened slowly onto a pristine white hallway. Silent. Sterile. Too clean. Bethel stepped out cautiously, her fingers brushing Adrian's sleeve for reassurance. The floor smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sharper, something metallic. Like blood masked beneath bleach. Adrian scanned the hallway with the scrutiny of someone who had walked this place before. "The rooms are down this way." Bethel swallowed. Dorothy said they were treating people off the record. "They are." "And experimenting." Adrian didn't deny it. He only said, "This is why I stopped trusting my own board." They reached a frosted glass door labeled Restricted Medical Wing A. Adrian pushed it open. Inside were 3 beds, monitors, 4 bags, and on the far side, Bethel froze. Dorothy. Her sister stood near the last bed, her blonde hair pulled into a low bun, her white nurse's scrubs crisp and clean. But her expression, terrified. When she saw Bethel, her hand flew to her mouth. "Bethel," she whispered. "No, no, you shouldn't be here." Bethel ran to her, wrapping her in a fierce hug. "Dorothy, I had to come. I did what you said. I warned him." Dorothy's eyes darted to Adrian. Her face drained of color. "You told him." Bethel stiffened. "You said he was in danger." Dorothy's voice shook. "No." "Bethel, I said don't let him drink anything. Not because he's the target, because he's the one the poison was meant to immobilize long enough to bring him here." Bethel's breath vanished. Adrian's body went rigid. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. He wasn't the victim, Bethel. He was the asset. What does that mean?" Bethel whispered. Dorothy pointed to the patient in the bed behind her. A man hooked up to tubes. Unconscious. Pale. Barely breathing. "He's been kept alive only by the treatments they're forcing me to give him," Dorothy whispered. "And Adrian, your blood is a match to his. A perfect match." Bethel's stomach dropped. "They're going to use you," Dorothy said, turning to Adrian, her voice trembling with guilt. "Your blood, or your organs. I don't know which. But they need you alive just long enough to." Adrian stepped back, horror rippling through his expression. Bethel felt the air leave the room. No, this couldn't be happening. The pieces slammed together like falling bricks. The lockdown floors. The missing records. The poisoned drink. The man in the uniform. And now this. Dorothy's voice broke. "Adrian, that man in the bed is your brother." Silence crashed through the room. Adrian didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. His face drained of color in a way Bethel had never seen on another human being. "My brother," he whispered hoarsely. Dorothy nodded. "He was brought in months ago. No name. No ID. But I saw old medical records. They hid them under another patient's file. He matches your blood type." Your genetic markers. It's him. Adrian staggered back a step. I thought he was dead. He's not, Dorothy whispered. But the only thing keeping him alive is what they can extract from you. Bethel's pulse roared in her ears. So the poison, she began. Wasn't to kill him, Dorothy said. It was to sedate him, to transport him upstairs without a struggle. And me. Adrian rasped. Dorothy looked him in the eyes. They want you on that bed next. Adrian Hale stood frozen beside the hospital bed, staring at the weak, pale man whose face, beneath the tubes, wires, and wasted features, was horrifyingly familiar. It was as if time tried to move around him but failed. Bethel watched the shift happen in him. A man who'd entered the ballroom with iron certainty, who moved like he commanded every floor he stepped on, was now unraveling in front of her. Lucas, Adrian whispered. His voice cracked. The first crack Bethel had ever heard in it. Dorothy gently stepped closer. That's his name. Adrian nodded once, barely. He disappeared 3 years ago, he said, still staring at the frail body. We thought he relapsed. He had a history of addiction. I tried to find him. I hired investigators, but they found nothing. Bethel's heart clenched at the raw pain threading through his words. Dorothy swallowed. Adrian, his chart says he was brought here unconscious, with signs of organ failure. They've been sustaining him with experimental treatments. Bethel scanned the room, her stomach twisting. The 4 bags weren't standard. Their labels were coded. The monitors weren't typical. Everything here seemed hidden, experimenting. Bethel whispered, "On him." Dorothy nodded slowly. "The medical director up here, Dr. Servin, he's been pushing a new biotech trial, something involving regenerative compounds, but they needed a viable genetic match for stabilizing the therapy." Her eyes flicked to Adrian. "You are that match." Adrian's jaw clenched hard enough to tremble. "They were using my own brother to bait me." Dorothy nodded. They needed a donor. Someone healthy. Someone whose body wouldn't reject the transfer. Bethel stepped forward, fury and fear swelling inside her. "Wait, are you saying Adrian's brother is being kept alive because they're planning to, what? Harvest Adrian?" Dorothy's eyes softened with apology. "I'm so sorry, but yes." A distant metallic clang echoed down the corridor. All 3 froze. Another sound. Slow. Deliberate. Footsteps. A security operative on this floor would never rush. They moved with purpose. Confidence. Authority. Adrian exhaled once, steadying himself. "Dorothy," he murmured, "where's the nearest exit?" Dorothy's hand shook as she pointed toward a secondary hallway. "Down there, through the pharmacy stockroom. But you won't reach it. Security controls these floors." "We'll try anyway," Adrian said. But Dorothy grabbed his wrist. "No, you don't understand. This level locks from the outside. No one leaves unless they approve it." Bethel's blood ran cold. "So it's a trap," she whispered. Dorothy nodded, tears forming. "Yes." Adrian's eyes hardened. "Then we break the trap." Adrian moved to the bed and checked his brother's pulse, eyes narrowing with controlled fury. "He's stable." "Barely." Dorothy nodded. "But if we disconnect him from those 4s for more than 10 minutes?" "I know what happens," Adrian said darkly. Bethel reached out instinctively, touching his arm with trembling fingers. "Adrian, what do we do?" He turned to her with a calmness that frightened her more than panic would have. "We don't leave him behind." Dorothy blanched. "You can't move him. The life support cocktail is unstable. You need specialized transport equipment, and even then." "We improvise," Adrian said. "Show me the dosage valves." Dorothy hurried to the machine, pulling up tablet-like controls. "These regulate vitals, oxygen levels, and the compounds in the 4 drips. If you change even the wrong decimal." Adrian gently took the controls from her. "Dorothy," he said softly, "I helped design the early models they modified these from." Dorothy's eyes widened. You did." Bethel's heart sank. He wasn't just familiar with the wing. He wasn't just a former owner. He helped build the system that now sought to destroy him. The footsteps stopped. A shadow darkened the frosted glass entry of Wing A. Bethel's breath caught. Adrian reacted instantly, hand pressing Bethel back behind a medical supply cart. Dorothy grabbed the emergency panel and dimmed the room's lights to amber, mimicking critical patient care mode. The door slid open. A man stepped inside. Black-gloved. Tall. Expressionless. Not the same man from the ballroom. Worse. His uniform wasn't hotel security. It was private clinical enforcement. Dorothy's lips moved silently. Dr. Servan's men. He scanned the room. Dorothy stepped forward, forcing a steadiness she didn't feel. "Sir, you can't be in here during stabilization." The man raised a hand. Silence. Bethel pressed deeper into the shadows, holding her breath. Adrian didn't move. Didn't blink. His muscles were coiled like a spring, ready to strike. The man walked slowly to Lucas's bed. Stared at him. Checked the IV. Checked the monitors. Then he spoke in a chillingly quiet voice. "Prepare the donor suite. The target was taken from the ballroom. We need the secondary subject sedated before we lose the window." Bethel's heart dropped. The target was taken? Adrian's eyes flicked toward her. He mouthed, "Not me. Someone else." Dorothy's pulse hammered visibly in her neck. The man turned slightly. "Where is Hale?" Dorothy froze. "Ha-ha-le." Adrian slipped noiselessly from his hiding spot. Behind the man. So silent Bethel didn't dare blink. The man repeated, "Adrian Hale." His drink was swapped. He should have been unconscious by now. Dorothy swallowed. I haven't seen him." The enforcer stepped closer to her. "Are you sure?" Dorothy's knees shook. Yes. "I'm sure." The man leaned in, his voice a phantom whisper. "Because if he's on this floor, he won't leave it." Adrian moved. In one swift, lethal motion, he struck the pressure point at the man's neck. The enforcer collapsed like a stone. Dorothy gasped. Bethel flinched. Adrian caught the body before it hit the ground too loudly. "Bethel," he said quietly, "lock the door." Bethel scrambled to the control panel, pressing the lock sequence Dorothy showed her. Metal shutters slid over the frosted glass. They had minutes. Maybe. Dorothy backed away from the unconscious enforcer, pulse racing. You didn't kill him, did you?" "No," Adrian said. "He'll be out for 5 minutes. 10 at best." Bethel stared at him. "How did you know where to hit him? That pressure point." Adrian wiped his hand on a towel, exhaling slowly. "Because when I sold this hotel, the board didn't just buy the property." He looked at the unconscious man on the floor. "They bought people like him. Specialists. The kind you hire when you're running something off the books." Dorothy stepped forward, voice shaking. "Adrian, what was this place for?" Adrian met her eyes. "Originally, medical recovery suites for wealthy clients. But the board shifted the agenda before I could stop them." Bethel felt ice pool in her stomach. "Shifted how?" she whispered. Adrian looked to Lucas's bed. "To research treatments the FDA would never approve." Dorothy covered her mouth. "Human trials." "Unregulated," Adrian said. "And your brother was one of them," Bethel whispered. "No," Adrian said softly. "He was bait. The one thing they knew would force me out of hiding if they could keep him alive long enough." Bethel felt a chill ripple down her spine. "Adrian," Dorothy whispered. "They're not just experimenting anymore. They are harvesting. Organ mapping. Regenerative tissue extraction. They've been prepping for a full transfer." Bethel nearly collapsed. "No." Adrian nodded once. They want to save Lucas. But not ethically. And not without destroying me in the process. Dorothy's voice cracked. They need your heart tissue, Adrian. Bethel's breath vanished. Dorothy's eyes filled with horror. Not figuratively, she whispered. Literally. Before Bethel could process the words, Lucas's monitor beeped erratically. Dorothy gasped and dashed to his side. His vitals are crashing. Something triggered a spike. Bethel stumbled forward. Is he dying? Dorothy's hands flew over the controls. No, no, not if I can stabilize. Adrian moved to the bedside. What do you need? A transfusion valve opened, Dorothy whispered. His body is rejecting the last compound they gave him. Bethel looked wildly at the 4 lines. Can you stop it? Dorothy hesitated only a second. Then she grabbed a syringe of stabilizing agent. And her hand shook. She couldn't get the needle in. Not because she lacked skill. Because her nerves were shot. Dorothy, Adrian said, his voice low and grounding. Look at me. Dorothy lifted her trembling eyes. You can do this, Adrian murmured. Just breathe. Bethel touched her sister's arm, anchoring her. Dorothy inhaled sharply. Then steadied the needle. Pierced the 4-tube. Injected the stabilizer. Lucas's monitor normalized. Slowly. Painfully. But it normalized. Dorothy collapsed back into the chair, sobbing with relief. Adrian touched her shoulder. Gentle. Grateful. Human. Thank you, he whispered. Dorothy nodded through tears. I can't let him die. Not after what they've done. Bethel knelt beside her. You save him, she whispered. Dorothy wiped her eyes, voice breaking. No. Not yet. She turned to Adrian. But we have to get you both out. Now. A sudden, shrill alarm blared through the hallway outside. All 3 froze. Red lights strobed under the door. Then a robotic voice echoed. Unauthorized activity in Wing A. Initiate retrieval protocol. Bethel's blood turned to ice. They know we are here, she whispered. Dorothy stood, her fear replaced with raw determination. No, she said. They know you're here. She pointed at Adrian. And they're coming for you first. The crimson emergency lights pulsed through the sealed shutters like a heartbeat warning of death approaching. The alarm wail was steady, merciless, mechanical, designed specifically to disorient, to intimidate, to break the nerves of anyone who tried to flee. Bethel clamped her hands over her ears, but it didn't matter. The sound drilled into her skull. Dorothy shut the last 4 valve and stepped back from Lucas's bed, breath trembling. They activated retrieval protocol, she whispered. If we are still on this floor in 3 minutes, they'll flood the hallway with immobilizing gas. Bethel's stomach lurched. Gas? Dorothy nodded, eyes wild. Standard for containment on restricted medical floors. It won't kill you, but it'll knock you unconscious in under 20 seconds. And then? Bethel whispered. Adrian answered with deadly calm. Then they'll strap me onto an operating table and harvest whatever they need. Dorothy closed her eyes. And they'll eliminate anyone who witnessed the procedure. Bethel's knees weakened. This was it. The moment everything slipped beyond fear into finality. But Adrian wasn't freezing. He wasn't panicking. He was assessing. Calculating. Planning. He turned to Dorothy. Is there a secondary escape route? Anything not on the main schematics? Dorothy shook her head. There was one. But it's sealed off. Only Servant's keycard can open the bypass door. Which is where? Dorothy swallowed. On his person. Adrian nodded, jaw tightening. Then we find him. Bethel grabbed his arm. Are you insane? The security squad is already on its way. Yes, Adrian said. Which means Servan will be with them, or ahead of them. Bethel's voice shook. That doesn't make it better. No, Adrian replied, but it makes him predictable. Dorothy stepped forward. Adrian, you can't face those men. I won't be alone, Adrian said, then looked toward Lucas. Dorothy blinked. Your brother. No, Adrian reached toward the unconscious enforcer he'd knocked out earlier. He turned the body over, checking the man's belt and pockets with clinical efficiency. What he pulled out made Bethel's breath itch. A stun baton. A heavy-duty access card. A thin metallic blade no longer than a finger, but sharp enough to slice medical tubing. He handed the baton to Dorothy. She stared at it. What am I supposed to do with this? Use it if anyone comes through that door before I get back. Dorothy flinched. I'm a nurse, Adrian. I can't just hurt someone. You won't be hurting them, Adrian said. You'll be buying us seconds. That's all we need. Dorothy trembled, but she nodded. Bethel, Adrian said, turning to her next. I need you to stay here. No. The word shot out of her before she could think. Bethel. I am not letting you run out there alone. If they take you, what am I supposed to tell Dorothy? What am I supposed to live with? Adrian exhaled sharply. You could die. I almost died tonight anyway, she shot back. At least this way I'm choosing it. He stared at her. Really stared. Bethel expected him to argue. Expected him to tell her to be reasonable. Instead, he said something she didn't expect. Something that sent a shiver down her spine. You're braver than anyone I know. Her breath caught. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. But if you come with me, you listen to everything I say. Exactly when I say it. Bethel nodded. Dorothy grabbed her arm. Be careful. Please. I will, Bethel promised, squeezing her sister's hand. Even if she wasn't sure it was true. Adrian pocketed the enforcer's metallic blade and keycard. Then he spoke the words that made Bethel's heart drop. We have 90 seconds to intercept Servin. Adrian cracked open the shuttered door. Smoke. No, not smoke. Vapor. The gas was beginning to seep under the cracks. Bethel's pulse spiked. Adrian. It's not the knockout agent, he said. Not yet. They're flushing the vents first. The hallway outside was bathed in rotating red lights. Shadows passed in and out of visibility like ghosts through fog. Adrian stepped out. Bethel followed so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He moved like a predator. Silent. Precise. Aware of every shift in the air. At the corner ahead, they heard footsteps marching in formation. 3 men. Maybe 4. He pulled Bethel into a recessed doorway. She pressed against the wall, heart pounding. The squad passed, dark uniforms, utility belts, visors covering their eyes. These weren't just enforcers. They were extraction specialists, trained to incapacitate without hesitation. Bethel held her breath until they were gone. Adrian released her wrist slowly. We are close, he whispered. Servin's office is the next corridor. They slipped deeper into the hallway maze. Deeper into danger. Into a place Adrian knew too well. Bethel whispered, How do you know the layout this well? Adrian didn't slow. Because before I sold this hotel, before the board turned it into something monstrous, I designed it. Bethel felt her stomach sink. You built this place. Adrian nodded once. I built the walls. They filled them with secrets. They reached a reinforced glass door with a plaque. Dr. Isaac Servin, Director of Biomedical Operations. Adrian reached for the access card, but stopped. Gunmetal clicking echoed behind the door. Bethel froze. Someone was inside. Not moving. Just waiting. Adrian motioned for her to stay silent. He raised the metallic blade. Pushed the card into the slot. The door unlocked with a soft hiss. Adrian shoved it open. And a figure turned. Bethel's breath caught. Servin. Tall. Silver-haired. Immaculately dressed in a clinical white coat that contrasted with the dark, dead look in his eyes. He was alone. and smiling. "Adrian Hale," he said calmly. "You're right on time." Bethel felt adrenaline spike through her veins. Adrian stepped in front of her, shielding her. "Where is your security?" he demanded. Servin waved a hand casually. "On their way to secure the wing. That gives us perhaps 1 minute to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Adrian snapped. "You're going to give me your keycard for the bypass door." Servin chuckled softly. "Oh, Adrian, you still misunderstand your place here." Bethel's skin crawled. Servin turned his gaze slowly to her, a gaze that felt like a scalpel slicing through her thoughts. "And you must be the waitress," he said. "The one who interfered." Bethel's throat tightened. Adrian took a step forward, voice cold. "Look at her again, Servin, and I cut your throat." Servin raised a brow. "Protective, are we?" Bethel felt heat rush to her face, but fear overshadowed it instantly. Servin tapped his fingers on the desk. "Your brother's condition has deteriorated," he said smoothly. "We need your cooperation immediately to stabilize him. You should be thanking us for preserving him this long." Adrian's knuckles whitened around the blade. "You sedated him," Adrian said, voice trembling with fury. "You captured him. You used him as leverage." Servin smiled like a man tolerating a child's tantrum. "He was dying before he arrived. We simply prolonged the inevitable so you would come." He paused. "And now you're here." Bethel felt Adrian's entire body tense beside her. "I'm going to take Lucas," Adrian said quietly. "And I'm going to burn every part of this wing to the ground." Servin tilted his head. "Only one problem." He reached into his coat pocket. Bethel flinched. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a syringe, filled with a clear, shimmering solution. Adrian stiffened. "What is that?" Servin twirled it between his fingers. "A rapid onset paralytique. Your drink from the ballroom contained a slow-release version. We plan to escort you here unconscious." He smiled. "But since you avoided that, this will suffice." He stepped toward them. Bethel's heart leapt into her throat. Adrian pushed her back. Servin lifted the syringe. And then, Adrian moved. Fast. Faster than Bethel had ever seen another human move. He swung the metallic blade. Servin dodged, shock flickering through his eyes as the blade sliced his sleeve instead of his skin. The syringe flew from Servin's hand. Bethel dove and slapped it away before it hit the floor. Adrian lunged. Servin grabbed a steel instrument tray and swung it like a shield. Metal clanged. Adrian struck again. Servin stumbled back against the counter. Their bodies collided violently. Servin grabbed Adrian's wrist, twisted. Adrian hissed. Bethel watched in horror, until she saw movement in Servin's other hand. He'd grabbed a scalpel, and he was swinging it toward Adrian. "No!" Bethel screamed. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She launched herself forward and slammed into Servin's back with every ounce of strength she had. The scalpel clattered to the floor. Servin staggered. Adrian seized the opening and drove the metallic blade into Servin's thigh. Servin gasped, a deep, shock sound, and collapsed to the floor. Adrian grabbed the syringe from Bethel's hand. Without hesitation, he jammed it into the floor, emptying its contents where it could harm no one. Servin writhed, clutching his leg. Adrian pinned him with a knee to the chest. "Keycard," Adrian said through clenched teeth. "Now." Servin's face twisted. "You'll never make it out. The retrieval squad." 20 seconds behind us," Adrian said. "I know." Servin glared up at him, blood seeping through his lab coat. "You think you can save your brother? You think you're leaving alive? No one defies this program and survives." Adrian leaned close, eyes blazing. "I'm not trying to survive. I'm trying to save him." Servin spat blood. Adrian didn't flinch. "Give me the card," he growled. Servin let out a shaky breath, Then, he reached into his coat pocket, very slowly, and pulled out a sleek black keycard. Adrian snatched it from his hand. Bethel exhaled shakily, but too soon. Servan's mouth curled into a slow smile. "You're too late." Adrian froze. "What?" Servan's voice was a whisper of triumph. "While you were playing hero, the gas sequence started early." Bethel felt her heart seize. Adrian surged to his feet. "Bethel, run." Bethel stumbled backward as a thick, white haze began curling from under the office door. The sterile smell of disinfectant mixed with something sharper, chemical, metallic. Her throat burned instantly. Panic clawed at her chest. "Adrian!" she shouted, coughing, the word barely audible over the wail of the alarm and the hiss of the ventilation system. He was already moving, dragging the unconscious servant aside within human speed. The red lights flashed across his face, determination carved deep into his jaw, eyes blazing. "Stay low," he yelled, shoving her to the floor. Bethel hit the tile, sliding forward instinctively, gas tickling her nose, stinging her eyes. Her lungs protested, but she forced herself to crawl after him. "Here!" Adrian grabbed her hand, pulling her behind a service cart just as the gas reached them in a choking wave. She coughed violently, gagging, but he kept his hand firm around hers. "This way," he said, voice cutting through the haze. "We don't have time for anything else." The gas was denser now, swirling in the narrow corridor, and Bethel could barely see past her own hands. Her mind raced. Seconds felt like hours. "Adrian," she rasped. "Lucas, what about him? We can't leave him." Adrian's face darkened. He glanced toward the bed at the end of the hallway. "We don't have a choice. Not if we want to survive long enough to save him properly." Bethel shook her head. "I can't just abandon him. We promised." "Promises won't save anyone if we are unconscious on the floor," he snapped. His voice softened slightly, seeing her trembling. "I will come back. I will get him. But first, we get out of this wing." Bethel swallowed hard. The logic was ironclad, but her heart refused to listen. Still, she let him pull her to her feet, their hands locked tight as they crawled low through the choking mist. The struggle. The corridor twisted ahead. Sharp turns, doorways, ventilation grates. Each step they took seemed amplified in the thick fog. Bethel felt herself losing balance, her legs trembling under the strain. Adrian's hand on her wrist anchored her, but it was exhausting just to breathe. A sudden metallic clank echoed behind them. Bethel froze. "Servan!" Adrian hissed. He triggered a remote override. From the haze, two black figures appeared, moving silently but deliberately. Extraction specialists. Their movements precise, surgical, their faces masked. Bethel's stomach dropped. Adrian pressed her flat against the wall, holding the metallic blade in one hand, her hand in the other. "Don't move," he whispered, eyes scanning for a gap. One of the men stepped into the corridor, shining a small flashlight. The beam cut through the fog, glinting off Adrian's blade. Bethel's pulse hammered. She could feel her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Adrian's muscles coiled. Then, with a fluid movement that seemed almost inhuman, he darted forward. The first man barely had time to react before Adrian struck his knee with the side of his blade. A muffled grunt. The man collapsed, sliding against the wall. The second moved to intercept, but Adrian spun, using the momentum to drive him into the corridor wall. Bethel crouched, staring in disbelief. She had never seen anything like it. Grace, strength, precision. Adrian Hale, the man from the ballroom, was a predator trained to survive. "Move," he barked, extending his hand. "Now." Bethel scrambled after him, coughing, tears stinging her eyes. The gas thickened, swallowing the hallway in white. Her lungs burned, but she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. They reached a service door, metal, reinforced, but with the bypass card in Adrian's hand, it clicked open smoothly. Beyond it lay a stairwell. Dim emergency lights flickered above them, casting long, eerie shadows across the concrete steps. The smell of the gas was fainter here, but still present. Adrian pulled Bethel up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, urging her forward. Keep moving. Her legs screamed with exhaustion. Her lungs felt like fire. Yet she refused to look back. Behind them, through the haze of the ventilation shafts, faint shouts and the echo of boots began to grow louder. The retrieval squad wasn't far behind. They burst onto the 9th floor landing. Adrian paused, listening. He could hear the gas dissipating slightly here, but he knew they had less than a minute. The corridor ahead split in 2. One path led to the rooftop, another to the service elevator's rooftop, he decided. Open air. Less control. We have a chance there. Bethel nodded, trying to catch her breath. And Lucas, she whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'll get him. Once we secure a route. But you need to trust me, Bethel. Right now, your survival matters as much as his. Her heart ached, but she nodded. The RFA reached the rooftop doors. Adrian swiped the keycard, and the lock clicked. They burst into the cold night air. Wind whipped against Bethel's face, carrying the scent of rain and concrete. For the first time in minutes, she could breathe. Adrian pulled her behind a parapet, scanning the roof. Helicopter access? Bethel asked, panting. No, Adrian said, eyes narrowing. Too visible. They'll track it immediately. But there's another way. He pointed toward a fire escape ladder leading down the side of the building. We go vertical. Faster. Less predictable. Bethel glanced down, hundreds of feet to the ground. Her stomach turned. You're not scared, she whispered. Adrian's lips twisted in a grim half-smile. I am. But fear doesn't get us out alive. Move. 1 step at a time, she descended the ladder, clutching the metal rungs. Adrian stayed close, steadying her when she wobbled. Every sound behind them, the alarms, shouts, heavy boots, reminded her of how close the retrieval squad was. They reached the lower roof levels. Adrian led her to an emergency hatch, prying it open to reveal a narrow service passage. Almost there, he said, glancing at the sky. The city lights twinkled below like distant stars, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding above. Bethel's leg shook, but she kept moving. Suddenly, a hand gripped her shoulder, rough, fast. Bethel screamed, whipping around, but Adrian was already on the man, twisting him aside with brutal precision. The retrieval operative slid down the hatch, rendered unconscious by Adrian's trained efficiency. Bethel's breath caught. How? Time doesn't matter, Adrian said, his face pale, sweat mixing with rain. What matters is getting to Lucas before Servan thinks he can use the chaos to his advantage. She nodded, teeth chattering, heart hammering. Then let's go. The two slipped into the shadowed service tunnels, the city sprawling below them. Rain began to fall lightly, the sound soothing in its normalcy, but Bethel knew the danger wasn't gone. Not by a long shot. Adrian led her onward, silent, alert, deadly. Every step brought them closer to Lucas, and closer to the moment where choices would decide who survived, and who didn't. Bethel's lungs burned from the climb, her fingers raw from gripping the metal rungs. Rain soaked through her uniform, plastering her hair to her face. Yet she didn't falter. Every step Adrian led her took them closer to the private medical wing where Lucas waited, the brother Adrian hadn't seen for years. This way, Adrian whispered, guiding her into a narrow, shadowed service corridor that led to a maintenance hatch above the restricted floors. The hatch leads directly to the medical wing. Less chance they'll intercept us. Bethel's teeth chattered, not from cold, but fear. And if we are too late? Adrian's jaw clenched. We are not going to be too late. I promised you. They reached the hatch. Adrian pried it open, the metal groaning faintly. Below them, dim lights flickered over the corridor, empty for the moment. The retrieval team hadn't yet realized the hatch was a potential entry point. Adrian slipped through first, Bethel following, crouched low, hands pressed against the metal frame. Rain poured down the shaft, creating a rhythmic drumbeat above them. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant. The emergency lights flickered intermittently. Adrian motioned for silence, every muscle taut with anticipation. Bethel's heart pounded. The sound of her own breath sounded deafening. They crept down the hall. Adrian's knowledge of the floor was uncanny. He led her directly to Wing A, the room where Lucas lay. "Stay behind me," Adrian whispered. "And don't make a sound." The door was locked with an electronic keypad. Adrian held up Servan's keycard. It slid into the slot, clicked open, and the door swung silently. Inside, Lucas lay unconscious, hooked to monitors and 4 drips, just as Bethel had seen him before. His pale face, labored breathing, and fragile frame made Bethel's stomach twist. Dorothy was crouched beside him, frantic. "I didn't know if you'd make it," she whispered as Adrian entered, closing the door behind him. "No time," Adrian said. "We are taking him out now." Footsteps echoed outside the room. Bethel froze. Servan's extraction team was approaching. Red lights flashed from their tactical visors, scanning the hallway. Adrian gritted his teeth. "We have 10 minutes. No mistakes." He worked quickly, recalibrating the 4 lines, stabilizing Lucas for transport. Bethel and Dorothy assisted, hands trembling, but following his exact instructions. Every second mattered. The door rattled. Shouts. The team was trying to break in. "Ready?" Adrian asked. "Yes," Bethel said, gripping her sister's arm. Adrian lifted Lucas onto a makeshift stretcher, a reinforced service cart, while Dorothy secured the monitors and 4s. Bethel followed, guiding the cart quietly through the dim corridor. The red lights grew closer. Footsteps pounding. Adrian glanced at Bethel. "Hold him steady. We are going to have to run." The ESA burst into the service stairwell, rain from above dripping onto their shoulders. Adrian led the way, careful to avoid detection. Bethel pushed the stretcher, Dorothy at the rear, securing 4 lines. Suddenly, the extraction team appeared at the stairwell entrance, blocking their path. Servan stepped forward, expression calm, holding a stun gun. "End of the line, Adrian," he said, voice cold. "You can't leave with him." Adrian didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he spun the stretcher, creating a shield between them and Servan. Bethel's heart leapt as she realized Adrian was willing to put himself between them and the danger. "Move," he shouted. They bolted down the stairwell, adrenaline surging. The team fired the stun guns, sparks sizzling in the air, but Adrian's calculated movements kept them just out of reach. Bethel glanced at Lucas, his breathing stable, monitors intact, and felt tears prick her eyes. He was alive. They reached the rooftop landing. Rain pounded around them, soaking them to the bone. Servan and 2 of his operatives appeared, cornering them near the ledge. "Stop!" Servan shouted. "You can't leave." Adrian stepped in front of the stretcher, glaring at Servan. "I will leave. And if you touch him, I'll make sure you regret it." A tense silence. The storm and rain masked their movements, but Adrian's stance was lethal, precise. Servan sneered. "You think you're unstoppable." Bethel swallowed, gripping Adrian's arm. "Do it. Now." Adrian didn't hesitate. Using the storm and the slick surface, he disarmed one operative, used the momentum to knock the other back, and with a fluid motion, sent Servan stumbling toward the rooftop edge. Servan grabbed at the ledge, dangling. Adrian's eyes met his. No more games. Servan let go, plummeting into the rain below. The sound of his body hitting the awning several floors below was muffled by thunder. Bethel's knees buckled. His gone. Adrian nodded, breathing hard, looking over Lucas to ensure he was still stable. He won't be a threat anymore. Bethel, Adrian, and Dorothy made their way to the service exit at the far edge of the rooftop. Below, a hotel service vehicle waited. Adrian had arranged for a discreet extraction. They loaded Lucas carefully. Adrian and Dorothy secured the equipment. Bethel finally exhaled. The rain had washed some of the fear from her face, but exhaustion weighed heavily. Adrian turned to Bethel. His eyes softened. "You were incredible tonight. You saved more than just me." Bethel swallowed. "We saved him, your brother." Adrian's lips twitched, a fleeting smile. "Yes, we saved him." Dorothy looked at her sister, tears streaming, relief overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't think we'd get out alive." Bethel hugged her tightly. "We did. Together." Weeks later, Lucas was recovering in a secure facility under Adrian's supervision. The board that had orchestrated the experiments was exposed, dismantled, and facing criminal charges. Servan's legacy ended in ruin. Bethel returned to her life, changed. Stronger, braver. But she still remembered the night in the hotel, the notes, the poison, the terror, the courage. One evening, Adrian appeared at her doorstep. Rain again. His suit damp. Hair mussed. But his eyes, intense, unwavering, fixed on her. "You did something no one else could," he said softly. "You trusted. You acted. You saved more lives than you realize." Bethel smiled faintly, heart still hammering. "We did it together." Adrian reached for her hand. Warm, steady, familiar, and, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper against the rain, "I couldn't have done it without you." Bethel looked at him. The memory of the ballroom, the note, the gas, the fear, all of it, flashed before her. She took a deep breath, feeling the storm within her settle. "You didn't," she murmured. "But thank you for letting me try." Adrian's grip tightened. "No. Thank you for trusting me, for trusting yourself." They stood there in the rain, wet, weary, but alive. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the world seemed wide open. Danger behind them, hope ahead. Lucas would live. Dorothy would heal. And perhaps, so would they. Bethel slid her hand into his. The note, the champagne, the terror, it all led to this moment, and she knew, somehow, this was only the beginning.